Well, violence against women, unfortunately, is a global problem, but there are certain places where there are real hot spots of violence against women. In South Africa alone, there are almost 60,000 cases a year of sexual assault. And what really concerns me and should concern all of us is that in some cases the violence is getting deeper and worse. You know, we've heard about the rape case in Delhi, the woman assaulted so viciously that she died of her wounds. About a month later, a young girl, 14-year-old girl, was gang raped and set on fire in Calcutta. I mean, this is the kind of violence we're talking about. Sure. This is an issue that affects all of us, men and women in all parts of the world. Why? Because it affects health. It affects things like the spread of HIV. It affects development. There are young girls who are dropping out of school, not able to go to school because they're not safe. It affects crime. It's often associated with the rise of gangs. The trauma and violence associated with it also contribute to radicalization, to political radicalization in some of the countries where we're concerned as a matter of U.S. national security. We can trace some of the roots of these problems to conflict, to distorted patterns of globalization, and to a kind of reinforcement of nationalism and ethnic violence in some parts of the world. Talking about the distorted globalization, I'd like to focus on that because it's less well understood. So what you have is almost a perfect storm where you have a lot of urbanization, migration, and movement. You have rapid economic changes and young men, rising youth populations, and they're unemployed, they're displaced, they're angry, they've lost traditional structures, living in urban shanty towns. Then you have young women who are newly vulnerable in the same shanty towns. They're migrating, they're out of the house, they're migrating usually to difficult jobs in call centers, they're working as maids, they're working in factories, but they're mobile, they're in public space without protection. My work this year is to try to understand better not just what's happening, but what can we do? And the good news is that there are things that international organizations can do. For example, there's the UN Global Safe Cities program that's working in Cairo and Delhi and Johannesburg, some of the most violent places. The overall structure that we need to look for is a formula almost, empowering women, engaging men, and ending impunity. So we do need to work very hard on rule of law, reinforcing police, building up those legal structures. And the US government, USAID has done work on that. We need to do more. There's a piece of legislation stuck in Congress called the International Violence Against Women Act. And we'd all like to see that moving forward because that would free up some funding and greater focus. The piece of engaging men is very interesting because the great hope is civil society. The great hope is that there are men and women alike protesting in the streets now in South Africa, in India, demanding accountability. And there are movements of men who are concerned with conflict resolution, the toll on their wives, their daughters. And that is where the hope lies because there are good people everywhere that want to end this problem.